Tracy Atherton, thank you so much for speaking with us today. Really welcome the opportunity. My first question is, how would you sum up your career to date?
So I knew from a very, very early age that I wanted to work in hotels. My grandparents owned a cafe, so I was familiar with hospitality. But I grew up in Wales, and there was no five-star hotels in Wales. There's probably only one now, even. So I went to study hotel school in Torquay, and then I was there for 4 years, and then I moved to London, and I started with Hyatt International at the Carlton Tower. And I spent 4 years there, and knowing that I loved hotels, I also loved to travel. So after 4 years with Hyatt, I went to see their HR, and I said, I want to move somewhere around the world. And she said, well, where would you like to go? And I said, anywhere. So they had this transfer list where you could put up your hand and then you would be transferred to somewhere around the world. And 2 weeks later, they said, we've got a job for you in Sydney.
Wow.
Yeah, so I moved to Sydney with Hyatt for 4 years also. Then I moved to Melbourne, where I started my first Melbourne job. I was front office manager, and I did the opening of Park Hyatt Melbourne. So after a few years with Hyatt, it became abundantly clear that it was a boys' club, and this was, 20 odd years ago. So I decided to leave Hyatt, and I joined Aman Resorts, which is an incredible luxury company in Bali, and they already had numerous female GMs, so I felt comfortable joining that company. And I was there for 10 years, and I absolutely loved every part of it. It was my first GM role. We intended to stay for 2 years, and then it became 10.
Wow, yeah.
So then after 10, my daughter was 4, as you know, and I needed to come back to Australia. So I then came back to Australia, and I opened up a really cool hotel in Canberra called Hotel. And at that stage, it was one of the first independent lifestyle hotels that had opened in Australia. So 4 years there, and then I got a call from the owner of Jackalope, Lewis Lee, to come and work with him and establish another independent lifestyle hotel on the Mornington Peninsula. So we did that. 2 years it took us to design and build the property, and then it opened, and it was very successful. 8 years with Jackalope, I then moved and opened up a new hotel in Melbourne called Melbourne Place. So that was also an independent lifestyle hotel, and that opened November last year.
So you've really managed and overseen so many different types of properties in different countries.
Yes.
I'm wondering, what hotel trends are we seeing right now? What can you predict for the future?
We're definitely seeing a shift in Australia to have more independent hotels and to have a really better focus on dining. We do not do dining well in Australian hotels. There are a handful that do them well, but I can see a shift to people really now focusing on having great restaurants within hotels. So that's happened in London, it's happened in New York, and we're now on the back of that, and we're now doing more of that, which I think is wonderful.
Do you think over time hotel guests are becoming more demanding? There's this concept called service creep, where over time the service levels just have to be better and better. What are you seeing?
I hate to reflect on COVID, but after COVID, people wanted an experience, and they were willing to pay top dollar for that experience. And when you pay more money, your expectations go from here to here. So at Jackalope, we saw that a lot. High demands, high expectations. And the challenge with the timing of that is that we hadn't worked in an industry for 2 years. So the team wasn't ready to service those expectations. So that was challenging. The demand on the guests is still there, and I think that people are happy to spend more money, but we have to provide that service.
Can you tell us about some of the more unusual requests that you've received over time? Are some requests just extraordinary. And have you been able to meet those demands?
So my property in Bali was very well known. We had a lot of celebrities there, and we had an A-list model, a supermodel. I can't say who.
Oh, that's okay. It wasn't me, was it?
It wasn't you, Liz. But I got the call from her to go down to her suite, and her suite was right on the ocean. And there was a big shipping tanker in the ocean outside her suite, but 10 kilometers away. And she said, please move the shipping tanker. I said, I don't know if I can do that. And she said, either you move the shipping tanker or I leave. So I actually had to call the Coast Guard and see if he could move the shipping tanker, and he said, absolutely not.
What? But you actually took steps to try and resolve that issue.
I think as hoteliers, we are, inherently people pleasers. We try everything that we can to make the guest happy. But this one I couldn't do. And she was worried that somebody on the shipping tanker would have a high lens camera and would take photos of her.
And did she still stay at your hotel? Did she move rooms?
She left.
Oh, okay. Might have been a reflection on her. I don't know. So many things are happening in the world and also in hotels. We hear a lot at the moment about AI, artificial intelligence, and I'm curious, how is this affecting your sector, your industry?
It's huge, Liz.
Okay.
It's not so much in the sector that I play in that 5-star sector, because we want guests want full service.
And human service.
Yeah. However, there are hotels now where robots deliver room service. You can check into a hotel with never meeting a staff member. You can check in and check out without meeting a staff member. The chatbots, it can go on and on. But I do think that creating a new hotel for me from scratch, I used ChatGPT quite a few times just to put in a question, how would you do this? And then I'd get a response. Yeah. So it's helped me in some ways. I think that the lower service hotels, there is a need for them, the 3-star, where, they need to limit their payroll because it's the biggest expense in a hotel. And that's where they go to AI and more technology driven.
Yeah. But you clearly prefer to play in that 5-star space.
Yes.
Can I ask why? What is it about the 5-star?
I have to love where I work, and I love 5-star hotels. And
do I.
And I've just been really fortunate in my career that I've been lucky to work in wonderful hotels that I love.
Yeah. This next question is a question about possibilities. If you had open slather, you were creating your own hotel from scratch, what would that look like? What would be some non-negotiable components to that?
So I did have that with Melbourne Place.
Did you?
I did. It was a blank canvas to create a hotel that Melbourne wants and needs. So I was lucky to work with incredible creative brands and incredible architects, and we designed that hotel based around what Melbourne needs and wants. For me, important factors are, we had to figure out who was our guest, who's the target market, and what do they want. And it was, we need incredible linen, we need incredible amenities. So we worked with Aesop on that. Yes. A really great curated minibar. Really great uniforms on staff, and hiring wonderful staff that also understand hospitality, and also that dining focus that I spoke about earlier. We created 2 different dining spaces for guests. Mid-air that you've been to on the 12th floor. Great cocktails and great wines and a great simple menu. And then Marmelo is our Portuguese restaurant on the ground floor. Very different, but it means that guests could come, park their car, go for a drink here, for dinner here, without leaving our building.
And there's something about Melbourne Place that it incorporates the essence of Melbourne. You know, you can even see it in Melbourne Place and see the laneways.
Yes.
Yeah.
We embraced that. You know, we embraced the laneways and the graffiti.
Yeah.
And that mid-century architecture that you could look at that building and think it's been there forever.
I actually did. Yeah.
But it's brand new, but it was designed so it would just complement the other buildings like Cavendish House where Gimlet is. You know, it was to complement that area of Russell Street.
Yeah. Can we move on to people management? Deloitte has come up with a recent leadership model, and it incorporates 7 leadership traits, and one of them is actually cultural intelligence. So that ability to work with different people from different cultures and manage and understand people from different cultures. You've worked in a number of different countries. What would you say if I asked you how important is cultural intelligence?
I think you have to respect all the different cultures that you work with.
Yeah.
So when I moved to Bali, I was 31. It was my first GM role. I was absolutely terrified. But I knew that the Balinese, or I had been taught that the Balinese will respect you immediately, but you have to then gain, that respect can be lost if you don't work with them. So I had to quickly understand their religion, their culture, what makes them perform, because it's different in Bali to performance of younger generation in Australia. And that was also challenging when I moved from Bali back to Australia. That was really challenging. In Bali, the staff come to work, they do their job, they come home, and they have that job for 20 to 30 years. Coming back into Canberra and dealing with the Gen Y and the Gen Z was very challenging. And I had to adjust my management style to adapt to, what the team wanted from me.
Yeah. And so, because in Australia, people don't generally stay in the one place for 20 to 30 years.
And hospitality, it's generally not a career. So for me, it was clearly a career. It was a path I knew I always wanted to do. But a lot of the kids that come through hotels, they're studying to be a lawyer.
Right.
They have different career paths. So I know if I interview somebody that's been to hotel school or the Blue Mountains or Torrens University in Melbourne, I know that's their career, and I'll snap those people up immediately.
So is that mindset different in other countries like India or Indonesia?
Yeah.
Is there more of a concept around a pathway or that sort of the loyalty to a hotel? I mean, culturally, what are the things that come into play?
In Bali, if you work in a 5-star hotel, that is a brilliant job for you.
Right.
And so for me to work there with them, it was really quite lovely that they all loved hospitality. Yeah. India has that same mentality as well. Hospitality is very important.
Yes.
And it is in Italy, where there's great food, and if you go to a great restaurant in Italy, the staff have been there for years and years, which is wonderful, and they're very proud about what they do.
And it's almost a calling for some people, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that's too strong a word.
I think, we love Gimlet, one of my favourite restaurants, but when you sit there and you look and watch the staff, they are professionals in hospitality.
Absolutely.
And Andrew McConnell has done that very well in all of his restaurants.
Yeah. You've run so many teams over your career, smaller teams and also pretty large teams.
Yeah.
How do you ensure high performance? Because it's really difficult to order someone to perform highly and to order someone to be committed or to have a good attitude, isn't it?
It
So
is.
how do you get around that? Any tricks?
I think for me, it starts at the hiring stage. I hire personality quite often over experience or what they can do, except for a chef. Obviously, a chef you're hiring for their skills. So you try and hire the right personality. And then my management style is I do not micromanage. I don't like to be micromanaged, and I don't micromanage my teams. So I give them the space to be able to do what they've been hired to do. Always have an open door policy, but then also, if the performance isn't there, then work with them and find out what is the challenging part of your job, how can I help you? And I think for me, that's worked with my teams. Also, a tip for me is when you do open up a new hotel from scratch, follow that 6-month probation and go with your gut. If someone's not performing and you've tried everything that you can, unfortunately, you have to part ways with them.
Yeah. What about, because you can almost plot this out on a matrix, I think, can't you? What if you've got almost the opposite, where you've got a real high flyer, they've got super high skill level, super high will level, and they've been working with you for quite some time. Is that also an issue? They're almost sort of, I don't like this term necessarily, but set and forget. You know that you can delegate something to them and that's all fine, but can it be problematic as well?
It can, especially if you are working for one hotel, where you might have a really great performance manager, but they need more. And my management style is, if I can't offer them more, I will help them find another job somewhere else. And I'll use my contacts to, help them, succeed with their career. And I've done that, quite often as well, which I enjoy to do because I love to see people that have come under me grow and go off to other jobs.
But that really involves, for someone to do that, you have to have a sense of security within your own leadership.
Yeah.
And also empathy. I'm empathetic towards what your situation is, and I can see your perspective.
Yes.
Yeah.
I suppose you've also got to have a succession plan.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that if you do help that manager move to another company, who's going to take that role? So there does need to be some thought behind that as well.
Can women have it all, just generally in any industry, and particularly in your industry where it is literally 24/7?
Yes, we can have it all. I'm probably an example of, I've worked my way, I've worked really hard, I've taken many risks in my career, and they've paid off. I've got a really great supportive husband that's enabled me to get to where I am. He also has a great career, but also I don't judge if mums or dads put their children into before school care or after school care. So for me to get to where I am, I had to do that. So yes. Scarlett she was like the general manager of before school care. She went from a very, very early age. I only took 3 months off when I had my maternity leave. Fortunately, I was living in Bali at the time, and I had some nannies to help me to do that. So I got help from external sources to be able to continue with my career. I do think, though, times are changing where in hotels, when we do have children, mums and dads can take a year off and can successfully come back into a working environment. That's all changing.
But that age-old saying, it takes a village.
It does.
it really does.
Yes.
Yeah, and part of that village may be employers looking at, in some cases, flexible workplace conditions.
Yes.
Even in hotels.
Even in hotels. So, and again, that is really changing. So the leadership team I had in Melbourne Place, for example, there were a lot of mums, and I think because I'm a mum as well, I can understand that sometimes they need to work from home. And there are certain roles that, yes, you can work from home 1 or 2 days a week. Sales would be a prime example. Finance, HR, they can do that. A receptionist probably can't. But I think that we need to not follow the rules. I think we need to be flexible and constantly looking at, can this be done? Can we enable a mum or a dad to have a successful career?
Absolutely. Earlier you mentioned the word risks, and you said that you've taken a number of risks in your life and that it's paid off.
Yes.
Do you find yourself pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, and do you deliberately put yourself in uncomfortable positions?
So it's funny that I don't realise I'm doing it until I've done it. So when I went on that transfer list when I was 24,
yes,
and suddenly I'm flying and I'm moving to Sydney, and then I'm freaking out.
Oh, on the plane.
On the plane.
When it's too late.
When it's too late. When I moved to Melbourne and opened Park Hyatt Melbourne, a huge risk. I drove down from Sydney to Melbourne on my own, packed my car, and again, freaking out in the car. Flying to Bali, I was 31, 32, my first GM role. But I get excited about new opportunities, and then I, as I said, freak out, but then I can manage to succeed. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I've taken many, many, many risks, but I've worked really hard to make those risks pay off.
Yeah. So it's an internally driven.
I'm very, very driven, very ambitious. I have to succeed, maybe at all costs, I'm not sure. It's funny, I said to Scarlett, why don't you work in a hotel? And she said, no way, Mum. Because I think she's seen, how hard I've had to work to get to where I was, and maybe she doesn't want to do that.
Yeah. What about your life values more broadly? What would you say are some of your values? What is the anchor and the rudder that you live by?
I'm very loyal, I'm very hardworking, I love my family, I love my friends, I have a very active social life. That's all really important to me. To get that work-life balance has to be right, and I think I'm getting better at it now.
Yeah, great. And who do you learn from professionally and personally?
I was lucky to work with Adrian Zecker, who founded Aman Resorts. He is a visionary, and he hired me for Amankila in Bali, and he said, I'll give you 2 pieces of advice, Tracy. He said, welcome every guest like you're welcoming friends into your home, and treat the bank account like it's your bank account.
Wow, I love that. It's scary.
I know, but I've passed that down to many managers as well. So he was a really great mentor for me, and now I love to mentor people. Claire at Jackalope, she worked with me in Canberra, so I was the GM and she was my front office manager, and I've mentored her for 12 years, and she's now the GM of Jackalope. So I love to see that as well and be part of that.
Do you think there is enough mentorship, allyship, sponsorship amongst women?
No, I think it comes organically, doesn't it? I think it's people that you meet along the way, and you have to get that connection, because sometimes you don't find a mentor. I think a mentor has to be someone that you connect with, but I don't think you can force that on anyone.
No, it's a heart connection.
Absolutely.
It does involve a heart connection.
Absolutely.
Doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Last question, Tracy. I'd love you to react to this quote, and the quote is, all journeys have secret destinations of which the traveller is unaware. How would you react or respond to that quote?
I love the quote. I think it's wonderful, and it sums up why we travel. We travel because we want to learn something different or experience something, and quite often we don't know what we're going to find. You know, I went to New York a few years ago and I hadn't been before, and you know, I fell in love with that city. It's quite amazing, but I didn't know that would happen, and it's an emotion that you get. So travel is all about secrets that need to be discovered and found, and sometimes, well, all of the time, we don't know where our journey will take us, do we? We don't know what tomorrow will happen, and that's part of life.
Well, Tracy Atherton, thank you so much, and I wish you well on your forward journey.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.